Hey guys, welcome back for another day of math learning. Looks like we'll be doing this a little bit longer than we had initially anticipated, but we'll march right on through it and keep on going on, guys. So, hope you guys are learning, enjoying this process as we continue to adapt and get better at it. So, today we are going to cover our last section in topic 6, which is 6.6, and that is working on finding the whole. Now recall in our last lesson we did 6.5, which dealt with finding the part and percent, and dealing with the aspects of percents. So today we're just focusing on the whole. Okay. Before we begin, I want to ask you guys to recall and identify what's the equation that we use when trying to find a part, percent, or whole. Okay, and I want that equation with the variable. So see if you guys can take a moment and identify that for me. Alright guys, so for this one, the equation that we use, just to recall, is A equals PB, where A, I'm going to identify each one. A is the part, which can usually be found, unless in a word problem, usually found by the word is, or say is this, is that. P, well, that's our percent, and B is our whole, which is often found, and except in some word problems, often found, identified by the word of. So let's take a look at this first one and identify and finding the whole. So 17 is 85% of what number? Another way we can think about that is 85% of what number is 17. Well, think about what our part is, our percent, and our whole is. And to see if we have each one of these identified here. So, we have 17 is 85% of what number, or 85% of what number is 17. So, in this case, what is 17? Well, 17 is identifiable by the word is. It's telling you that 17 is 85%. Well, 85% isn't a whole because it's not 100%. So that tells you, since it's saying literally 17 is 85%, that 17 must be the part. So we would substitute 17 in for A, which is our part. Well, we know our percent. It's identified by our percent symbol, so we could just write in 85%. And we don't know our whole yet because it wants to know of what number, which is going to be whole. So 17 is 85% of what number, of what whole? And that's what we're going to look for. So that's where we're going to get our variable b. I'm going to put a multiplication sign and a variable b. Now, you could go about solving this with the percent symbol there, having the 85%. Okay. You can also go about solving this without the percent symbol. I'm going to show you both ways, and in both ways you do need to be able to make sure you are using your calculator properly. So this first way, with the percent, we are going to set up a t-chart like we had before. The reason we're going to set up a t-chart in this case is because we have a number and a variable on the same side of the equation, and we have to get rid of the number next to the variable. In this case, it's a coefficient because you're multiplying it by the variable. But we have to get rid of this and isolate and get the variable by itself. The reason we don't set up a t-chart when we have looking for the part is because there's nothing that we need to move on either side of the equation. There's no scale that we have to balance. But in this case, there is. So we have to get rid of this 85% times b and get this 85% away so that the variable is by itself. Well, how are we going to do that? In order to do this, we are going to have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division, and divide it by this 85%. When we do that, okay, it gets rid of the 85% on this side of the equation. Okay, 85% divided by 85%, that's just 1. So we're left with 1b, or just, in this case, b. We can bring down our equal sign. Recall, whatever we do to one side of the equation, we must do to the other. So on the other side, we have to divide by the same quantity, which is 85%. This is where you can grab that handy-dandy scientific calculator, make sure that it is on. Now watch very closely and pay attention to how I'm going to type this in and what I type in first. Since it's 17 divided by 85%, we're going to type it in exactly how we read it. So 17 comes first, so we're going to type in 17. There's 17. We're going to hit the division sign. That's what we're dividing by. And go ahead and type in the number 85. But since we're dealing with a percent, we have to put the percent symbol in here. So you have to feel really comfortable with that. To do that, you have to make it 85%. Hit the second function button. Turns on all the second functions. And then you're going to type in the open parenthesis, or hit the open parentheses button, okay, which is now the percent button. When you do that, it's going to put a little percent symbol after it. So if you look at my screen, you have 17 divided by 85%. When you hit enter, you will get 20. So 17 divided by 85% is 20, and so 20 is B, or 20 is the whole. So we can now read this sentence as 17 is 85% of 20. Okay. Another way you could do this, so you have your percent here. Another way you could do this is convert your percent to a decimal, which you may have to do in some cases. So recall 85% written as a decimal is going to be 85 hundredths. If you're not quite certain how I got 85 hundredths, make sure you reach out to me and you ask, because this was covered in a previous video. And once again, you would set up your T-chart, isolate the variable b by itself by dividing by 85 hundredths on both sides. And I'm writing a little quick and sloppily here, trying to do my best. When you do that, these cross out, you're left with b. You bring down your equal sign, 17 divided by 85 hundredths, and your calculator would yield 20 as well. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. So Bree scored 90% on her math test. Out of the total possible points on the test, her score was 135 points. How many possible points were on the test? I want you guys, again, real quick, remind me of the equation that we're going to use to solve this. So the equation we're going to use, just recall again, is that A equals PB, where we have A the part, P the percent, and B the whole. We need to identify each part of each one of these in this problem. So we have Bree scored 90% on her math test. That's going to be our percent. Okay, that's pretty obvious there. If we can find the percent in the problem, we're going to use it. So 90%. Out of the total possible points on the test, her score was 135 points. Now notice she scored 90% on the test. So she didn't get 100. She got 90% of the questions correct. 90% of the points. So then her score being 135 points, well, is that going to be the part or is that going to be the whole? Well, since she got 90%, not all the questions or not all the points, the 135 couldn't possibly be all the points that were available on the test. So this 135 could only be the part then, and that's going to make sense. So it's going to make sense in this context because it is not the total amount. Plus, this is out of the total. So we want to know how many possible points there were. So 135 is the part. So we need to identify the whole. Once again, you can set up your T-chart from here. What do you guys think you would do to now solve for B and get it by itself? Go ahead and do that. Answer that question now. Okay, in order to find that, you would have to divide by 90% on both sides. Okay, bring down your equal sign. 90% divided by 90%, that cancels out. You're just left with B. Then in your calculator, this is where we're going to enter it in. So you have 135 that you're going to enter in first, because 135 divided by 90. Hit the division sign. Type in the number 90, just like that. And now we got to put our percent symbol in. So we're going to hit the second button. We're going to go down. We're going to find that open parentheses. We're going to hit that and add the percent in. And then hit enter. And you're going to get 150. So notice our answer is actually bigger than the 135 points, which should make sense because 135 is 90% of 50. So the total number of points was 150 points. All right, let's keep on going, guys. So the students in one classroom sold tickets to the talent show. They sold 200%, look at that, 200% of the amount of tickets that they sold last year. How many tickets did the students sell last year? So we need to find 200% of what number is 40. So I'm going to underline of what number as well. Okay, so using that equation, A equals PB, I want you guys to take a moment, see if you can solve this one on your own. So for this one, you have to realize 200% is greater than any percent you've dealt with so far. It's greater than 100%, but it's still going to represent our percent down here. So we're going to substitute that in for P. In this case, 40 is going to be your part, okay? Because you want to figure out the whole, which was the amount of tickets that they sold last year, or the of. When you do this, you divide by 200% on both sides of your equation, and do 40 divided by 200%, which gets you 20, and that's your whole. Now notice in this case, your whole is going to be smaller than your part, because your part is 200%, and not less than 100%, so it's actually greater. So they actually sold 20 tickets last year, and they had an increase. They sold 40 this year, so good for them. Okay, guys. Take a moment and see if you can figure out what 62.5% of what number is 30. Okay, in order to figure this one out, you have to take 62.5%, plug it in for P, your percent, and realize that it says is 30, so this 30 is the part. We substitute that in for A, we're looking for B. You divide both sides by 62.5% and end up with the whole as 48, so 48 would equal B. Alright guys, try this next one on your own. Cora gave her nail technician a $4.90 tip. The tip was 5% of the cost of the manicure. Write an equation to find B, the cost of the manicure. And then I want you to find out what B is. Go ahead and do that. So for this one, you have to realize that the tip, anytime you have a tip amount, that's always going to be a part. So in addition to what Cora paid, she paid this $4.90 tip, which was, right here it says the tip was 5% of the cost. So the tip is 5%. It's telling you that it's the part, and you want to know the cost of the manicure. Well, remember there's two ways you can write the equation. It's 490 equals 5% times B, or 490 equals 0 and 5/100ths B. Divide each side by 5/100ths. You end up with 98 equals B. So this manicure ended up costing $98, not including the tip. Sounds like a pretty expensive manicure. Alright guys, take a moment. I want you to figure out these next two problems on your own. So this first one, when you substitute in your part 98 and your percent 35%, divide each side by 35%, you get your whole as being 280. In our second problem, 60% of what number is 15? 15 is our part, 60 our percent. Looking for the whole, divide both sides by 60%. You end up with your whole as 25. Okay guys, take a moment and see if you can figure this one out. So for this one, you're going to substitute in your percent for P at 0.3%, very small percent, and 24 as your part. When you figure this out, you end up with your whole as 8,000%. Okay. Hope you guys have a stupendous rest of your day. Thank you for watching.